magnificent day. It is only natural that we think of intimate or intimacy in sexual terms. After all, that's what movies and TV and television and society have taught us through the years. However, it means so much more than just sex. The word intimate has been around since 1538 and come from the Latin word intimatus. And that originally meant becoming deeply seated, most inward, making known, impress, and very familiar, just to name a few. Notice sex wasn't in there at all. Today's definition includes a private, personal, closely acquainted and familiar, and the American Urban Dictionary says that intimacy is two people are within each other's minds, which I really like, without boundaries, or, last but not least, involved in sex and something personal. I believe that intimacy is what we call the experience of really knowing and being known by another person. An intimate friend is someone we feel very close to. They know us very deeply. Last week I sent a bouquet of flowers to a friend of mine that I met 50 years ago and said, thanks for the 50 years. And she's a woman who knows me very deeply, and that I'm not afraid to share my secrets with or my fears. And she is the same with me. In fact, I was the first one that received a call when her husband died. And so I think that we always misconstrue what intimacy really is. If something happened that damages the intimacy of our friend, they feel distant from us. Or a person who doesn't know us intimately knows us superficially. I have been reading Thomas Keating's book, Intimacy with God. And he was an American Catholic monk and priest and was known as one of the principal developers of centering prayer, a contemporary method of contemplative prayer. He's a prolific writer, and you will find many of his books very educational and very informative. I have to admit, I was hooked from the first chapter entitled Making Friends with God. According to Keating, the spiritual path is based on a deepening trust of God. Why? Because trust allows us to take the initial leap to encounter God at a deeper level than ourselves. I've worked with a spiritual mentor now for over 20 years. She calls moving to a deeper level within like taking an elevator down into a coal mine. We're moving into places within ourselves that we have not seen, touched, and haven't seen the light of day for years. And if you've ever been in a coal mine, you know that there's all these trails off and they're always very dark. It's the places we have to go to heal and unfold to establish a greater relationship with God. Trust is at the heart of intimacy. The more we trust someone, the closer we let them get to us. The degree to which trust is compromised in a relationship is the degree to which intimacy will evaporate. Our deepening spiritual journey may be blocked if we carry negative attitudes and beliefs about God. Usually those attitudes and beliefs were created in childhood during an early religious training or experience. We may have thought that God was an angry father, a harsh judge, or someone that predicted our life. I can remember as a kid that I thought God had a book on all of us, and he had written before we were even born what we were going to do and accomplish in our lifetime. so much for will, free will. This is certainly not what I believe today. Or how many times have you heard someone say, it was God's will that someone have cancer, or it was a heart attack and it was God's will, or they had an accident and died. That was all God's will. Again, so much room, actually the lack of room for free will. Perverse religious attitudes and beliefs represent distorted spiritual values. It is true of most spiritualities and religions. We will still have those kinds of belief. It is hard to develop a desire to begin a spiritual journey. In Matthew 23, Jesus is talking to his disciples about the scribes and the Pharisees. He is discussing what they do and how it is wrong and hurts others. In verse 26, he states, "Clean first the inside of the cup and of the plate, so that the outside may also be clean." I love that definition or that statement. What he is saying is that we must work on what lies within, which is our error beliefs and what is not working for us, so that people around us see and know we're positive and loving to others, both internally and externally. Scripture tells us that our internal motivation is more important than our external act. Returning to our original statement about our relationship with God being built on trust. As we make the effort and deepen our relationship with God and our relationship with ourselves and with others, our relationship with God continues to grow. People have all kinds of misconceptions about intimacy with God. The first misconception is intimacy is all about sex. First, in a world that regularly defines intimacy as something sexual, it is difficult to conceptualize that it is possible to have intimacy with the divine or others that does not include sex. God is the spirit that is one with each of us. To think otherwise is to live in duality, and we know that's not what we believe. Misconception number 2 is that intimacy should be easy. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Intimacy with God does take a lot of effort. Many individuals won't take the time that it requires. Some fear that creating a relationship might demand too much of them or too much of their attention, or they might have to do something that they really don't want to do. This is usually caused by a fear that their day-to-day life will be consumed by God. They believe pursuing a spiritual journey will compromise their autonomy. Misconception number 3. Intimacy shouldn't involve waiting. I mean, automatically I clap my hands and it's there. Wouldn't that be wonderful? We've been groomed by the media to expect quick results for very little effort. We unconsciously put a stopwatch on God. It's like sending a cell phone message and getting an immediate answer. Trust me, messages from God sometimes take days, weeks, or in my experience, even months. Misconception number 4. Intimacy with God is only for special people. Many people assume that being intimate with God is a very special calling. They think that the average person can't have an intimate relationship with God. I'll never forget a couple of years ago, a friend that I play golf with, her husband was had bladder cancer, and she came to me and she said, "You have a direct line. I don't. Would you please pray for my husband?" And I looked at her and I said, "No, I don't have a direct line. We all have a direct line." I kind of chuckled. I hadn't heard that one before. You have to create your own Uber to get there, but opportunity does abound. Your center offers classes, and you have a lending library as well as books here that you can buy. And there's a multitude of prayer individuals here who can help guide you in your journey to find God. If you truly choose to create an intimate relationship with God, there is always a way and an abundance of assistance. All you have to do is ask. Helping us stay connected has become big business in our culture. Smartphones, Facebook, Twitter, X, Instagram give us instant access to friends, family, work, and our world. But how much time do we actually spend building meaningful face-to-face relationships? It was interesting. I'm a police chaplain, and I was talking to one of the sergeants not too long ago because the young new people that are coming in as new police officers don't know how to communicate. They've been too busy all their life looking at a screen and typing out what they want to get through in shorthand. How many of you use you instead of YOU or R instead of ARE in your messages? It's just translated that way. And so young folks are not learning to communicate with other people. But how much time do we actually spend building meaningful face-to-face relationships? Of course, that did become more challenging because of COVID for a couple of years. And let's go one step further. How much effort do we invest in connecting with God? I'll let you think about that one. So how do we develop intimacy with the Creator? What is it that calls us to make a commitment to go deep within? First, we have to have a yearning to know God in a greater and more personal way. In the Science of Mind text, Dr. Holmes tells us, "They who hunger and thirst after righteousness shall be filled." Is there anyone who does not have a soul hunger? Does not the spirit of man thirst after knowledge and understanding, yearn for the truth and reality, as blind men yearn for light? And his hunger can only be satisfied with spiritual food as manna from heaven. If you have no desire to know God at a deeper level, then the assumption is that you do not yearn for that more intimate relationship with God. Next, we have to be willing to be vulnerable. I'll be the first person to tell you that's a tough one. Nobody likes to be vulnerable. Our natural instinct is to protect ourselves at all cost. Brené Brown, America's psychologist, tells us embracing our vulnerability is risky, but not nearly as dangerous as giving up on love and belonging and joy. The experiences that we make that make us the most vulnerable. Only when we are brave enough to explore the darkness will we discover the infinite power of our light. There's that word darkness again. We have to be willing to look at what is hidden deep within that is preventing us from creating that intimate relationship with God. And it takes courage and a willingness to lay down what we're afraid of the most. Often That is what lays behind deep within our subconscious. Next, we have to be open. Ernest Holmes tells us that Christ stands at the door and knocks. We, however, must be open if we're ready to receive. It's about our willingness to be still and listen. Holmes once stated, "We are still perfect beings within, and the within may become the without if we will carefully train ourselves to listen to the inner voice of truth, which speaks to us in our moments of quietness and solitude." The within may become the without. Remember the verse about cleaning the inside of the cup? It's the inside that we must be still to hear the voice of the divine. And the only way we can do that is settling life within us. Once we have listened and heard the truth, we tend to become more honest with ourselves and others. Mother Teresa once said, "Honesty and transparency make you vulnerable. Be honest and transparent anyway." At my father's memorial service, as well as at his 100th birthday that was a couple of months before, numerous people stepped forward to share their stories about what an honest man he was. And by that honesty, there was a transparency that all could see. He was not only honest with others, but about himself. He was willing to admit his mistakes and move on. I loved it especially when he laughed at himself. One day when I went to visit him, something came up and all of a sudden he said, "I will never, ever forgive Ted Kennedy for Chippequatic for killing that girl." And I said, "Gosh, Dad, when did you die? When did God die and you became God?" And he just howled about it. He thought that was so funny that I caught him in it. But that's what we need to do, is to be honest with ourselves and then laugh at ourselves when we make a mistake. We all knew, however, that the number one priority in my dad's life was God. He had done his inner work for years. Finally, we come to understand and know that on this intimate journey we develop greater wisdom. Charles Fillmore, a Unity minister, the founder of Unity, indicates in the revealing word, "Wisdom and divine understanding are attributes that come from the Spirit of Christ within. The price that we must pay for conscious attainment of divine wisdom and understanding is the letting go of the personal self with its limited beliefs." Wisdom is such a gift. It includes intimately knowing the voice of God within and understanding and discrimination. It's so much more than learning book knowledge. It's the inner knowingness that you are one with God. There's no separation or duality within. You're probably wondering why I have quoted so many spiritual scholars this morning. The answer is simple. I wanted you to know the importance that the spiritual teachers placed on these qualities of yearning, vulnerability, openness to listen, honesty, and wisdom on our spiritual journey to intimacy. So just how do you get to that place of yearning? How do you commit to a spiritual journey that will take you into deeper places of healing and knowing? It means committing to intimate time every day to spend in the study as well as prayer. First, make a commitment to a quiet time every day. Determine the value intimacy with God will have in your life. You view it equally as important as food to your body or oxygen that you breathe. Prioritize your time and schedule it on your calendar. Start off slowly. Not all of us are great at doing it. I'm not so great when I got started doing it. So just begin in short increments, like 10 minutes. As you become more comfortable with the time, you can increase it 1 minute at a time. Choose a special place. Maybe it's your garden or a special chair in the living room. Place things that are important to you in your spiritual place. Maybe it's a candle with light, a special picture, a stone. Whatever it is, make this your sacred space. Select a spiritual book to read. There are plenty of books out there, Science of Mind, Unity. I could list a multitude of authors that you would find interesting. Or it could be a course in miracle, or just picking up the Bible and reading, or an author that helps you understand your journey and the challenges that you're facing so that you can heal and grow. Use a journal to write down your thoughts and insights. It doesn't have to be lengthy and complicated. It might contain a quote or a gratitude or an experience that has been nudging you forever. Ever since I walked the Camino about 10 years ago, I carry a journal. This is my journal because we forget things so easily. And so if it's a quote that I've seen, or maybe it's a word that reminds me of something that I want to write about, but I jot it down in here so that it's not forgotten when I get home. Be sure to pray and treat when you move, and then move your feet. Remember, this is your time to have a conversation with God in your very own words. If you haven't learned the 5 steps of treatment, be sure to keep the prayer positive. Know and embrace that it is already done in mind, in love, and in law. And don't forget to be patient with yourself, something that a lot of us have trouble with. Change comes slowly. And be sure to spend time with others who support your beliefs, to spend time with others who, like joining a discussion group or taking a class or attending a workshop. Those are things that will bring you closer and more intimate with God. When I was in college, I took a couple of semesters of ceramics. I soon learned the process of breaking up the air bubbles in the clay. Usually we started with a large lump of clay, and there were these piano wires on a board, and we cut it off and then slam it down, and cut off another piece and slam it down. Loved to do it when I was angry. And you'd break these air bubbles out, and you'd keep slamming it down and putting it back together again and slamming it down. And then we had to learn to take that lump of clay that we wanted and center it on a wheel that we kicked with our feet. And of course, you were supposed to do that consistently at the same speed. It was a challenging process as well to learn how to shape that lump of clay on a wheel that I had to turn my leg on. It was my task to determine what I was making: a cup, a vase, a glass, a pitcher, an odd-shaped one. You had to decide what it was. And there were a multitude of projects that had to be completed to get your grade. Now, before the item that we did could be placed in the kiln, we would have to trim our creation. If the instrument and our hands were not steady and the wheel wasn't going around perfectly, we could destroy the cup or the glass or the vase or the plate. Then came the initial drying process, where the project was left to air dry for several days. We're talking patience. You could not rush a pot. And then the item was placed in the fire at a very low temperature. Again, a slow process. This had to be done slowly because if you sped it up, the item might burst. And if it bursts, then it might break other people's projects. Next, the kiln fire is increased first to 350 and then ultimately 500 degrees. This is done to evaporate the water inside of the item. There are a few more steps in the firing process that you did, especially after you painted it. Sometimes the cup or the bowl may shrink during the next stage, which is called the vitrification process. This is when the clay hardens and becomes thicker or thinner. This happens because of the melting of the various components in the clay. Ultimately, the clay is strengthened through this process of firing. While the clay cup or pot is an object, it goes through a similar process that we do when our spiritual journey of intimacy with the divine begins. We are shaped and molded. We are dried, we're painted, we're growing. And then when we go through the many stages of firing to learn and to heal and to grow, ultimately we're transformed by our faith and our trust in the divine. This is the truth in my life, and this is the truth in yours, and so it is. Amen.